Alright, welcome back to this video series where we provision an EKS cluster on AWS. The moment we've all been waiting for, right? So we've worked on a couple of things. We've worked on the networking aspect of things. We've worked previously on the role that EKS will need to do certain things within our own environment. Remember, as kind of mentioned in the first video where we delved deep into how EKS works. Remember, EKS is provisioned in an AWS account that's managed by AWS. Obviously, and then we provision things in our own account, and so there obviously needs to be certain rules and policies that EKS then assumes in order to do things in our own environment, right? So, anyways, enough about that. So, we're gonna say EKS, sorry, AWS EKS. We want a cluster, right? And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna say this. All right, let's not be generic. In fact, I'm just going to say EKS cluster as the block name. Then what I'm going to do is name var.eks name. We've done that. And then obviously that role we've been working on. So eks.arn, that's what it's going to assume. And then the version, right? So the latest version at the moment is 1.28. So I'm just going to do 1.27. Right, and then so in terms of the VPC configuration, this annoying thing, right? Let me try and do this. Let's configure this thing. All right, I don't know how to configure it, so I'm just gonna close it for now. Again, leave something in the comments if you know what that is. Let's just close that. Okay, so the VPC config got distracted there. So what subnets are we wanting to deploy for EKS to work with, right? So I'm just going to say the module VPC, and I'm going to say private subnets over here, right? And that will pass it so this is a list. This is going to return us a list, and this is returned, or it's an output from the VPC module. And then in terms of the endpoint private access, we're going to set that to false because we want to be able to access our cluster with CTL. All right, so in terms of public, we're going to say that that's true, and then public access CIDRs will be 0.0.0.0.0/0. Okay, cool. Now, okay, let's move on to the Kubernetes network config, and then we'll say we'll set that to 172.20.0.0/16. And then what I'm going to do here is in the next one here, I'll say enable cluster logs, and these are the type of logs we want to be able to work with. So I'm going to say API, and then I'm going to say these are the logs we want created for our cluster. Sorry, put that in. So authenticator rather. Okay, and then controller manager, and then we'll have a scheduler. Okay, cool. And then lastly, we don't want this cluster created before certain things happen, right? So and I'll tell you what those are, right? So we want this cluster to only be created if the role itself has been created, as well as those attachments, right? Because if it happened the other way around, then EKS wouldn't be able to assume the roles. Okay, so I'm gonna say we've done the policy one. Let's do the VPC one, right? Okay, and what I like to do at the end is then to I like to use a provisioner, which is essentially a script that will run once this resource has been created, right? It'll run on my machine. What I like to do is to have this command AWS EKS -- region, and obviously we've got the region, so we'll pass it here. And then what I'm going to say is update dash cube config dash dash name, and obviously I'll pass in the var.eks underscore name. Right. So what this will do is that it'll use the profile that I have set up in the console in my terminal, and then it'll run this command, which will then update the config file for our cube CTL, right? So that way we're kind of automating this because we would have to do this manually, right? But this kind of automates that, and then we'll be able to connect to that particular cluster from our terminal using kubectl, right? So yeah, that's it essentially. I know it was kind of simple, but that's how we go about creating our EKS cluster. It does take a while to create. So what I'm gonna do is in the next video, I'm sure there's a lot of things to kind of fix and all of that. So in the next video, what I'm gonna do is we're gonna start now working with the commands, Terraform commands to deploy this cluster. Right. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.